Hello, everyone. We are happy to introduce a wonderful panel of speakers here with us today. And we will talk about the roadmap to drive 1 billion users in blockchain. And I will start from the first question, which I will ask to all of our panelists. Based on your experience and what exactly you are doing in Web3, how do you see blockchain solving economical problems in the years to come? What's your take on that? And we'll start from Will.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliet. Great to be here. So you know, we run a venture capital fund, which is kind of old school, right? Nobody needs venture capital funds in the crypto future. What we are looking at, I would say, is mainly two things. First of all, we are quite bullish on crypto and blockchain analytics. The second part, I think, is how to connect real businesses, real business processes with decentralized finance. I guess that's mainly what we are looking for. How it's going to solve the economy in the future, that's hard to say. I think we're still trying to explore that. I think the main interesting point for us is how the blockchain makes certain processes cheaper and more accessible. But I wouldn't know much more than that right now to share. Thanks.
Maybe certain industries where you think the impact would be the most of use if you use the blockchain tech.
The current thinking for us is mostly finance right now, I have to say. Mm-hmm. We have a hard time seeing a lot of the business cases being raised in a lot of other industries because there's usually good alternatives in terms of central authorities. So if there are good alternatives for central authorities, the use of blockchain is not very rarely warranted based on our analysis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Will. And I'll pass the same question to Dr. Farrukh.
Hi, thank you so much, Juliet. It's a pleasure to be here in this panel. So the question is like what we are doing in Web3. So let me just give you a brief background that I'm based in Dubai, and then we have a company which is called Alif Technologies. So we provide advisory, consultancy, platform development, and educational programs, workshops. And I have another company that is called Shariah Experts. It's an Islamic legal advisory firm which is focused on Web3 projects only. So this is, I can say, sort of like a first in the world because it's if you look at the Islamic world, the halal economy, which is almost $7 trillion at the moment, you would find that it is still slow paced in the Web3, metaverse, NFTs, cryptos. The main reason is because mostly people are reluctant to adopt this technology and the phenomena of crypto because they are not clear that whether it is halal or not. And by the way, it's a huge market. Like I could say, like if you look at the statistics, they are very amazing. For example, we see that there are 1.8 billion Muslims, almost 25% of the whole world population, 57 OIC countries where the Muslim majority population reside. So Indonesia, by the way, is very close to Singapore, which is the largest populated Muslim populated country in the world at the moment. So what I have seen is that there is still a lacking of adoption, and that's where we come in to bridge the gap between this whole halal economy and Web3 projects. For example, like we would like to introduce cryptos, blockchain adoption, and then not only that, but DeFi, decentralized finance, NFT, metaverse, etc. Recently, we have also done an MOU with Halalverse, where we are trying to build a whole ecosystem of halal projects in the cryptoverse. For example, we are inviting investor community. We are also having events and different types of webinars, virtual, physical, etc. And then the third pillar is actually focusing on Launchpad, where projects which would like to cater the need of the Muslim community globally can focus on the area and then try to serve that segment basically, which is I think that which is untapped segment at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Farrukh. And the same question goes to Raymond. Gabriel.
Thank you, Juliet, and thanks for having me on this panel. I think the space I work on is legal fintech. We do Shariah and conventional will writing, legacy planning, and blockchain has got fantastic uses there in terms of verification of assets, in terms of transfer of assets, in terms of digital assets and the transfer of NFTs, artwork, and everything else. I think the world is getting excited about it, so are we looking at adopting it. In terms of economic problems that blockchain can solve, I've got several things that I'd like to share. I think the first thing is when you look at donations, right, in terms of countries helping the poor or identifying the poor, blockchain can look at actually looking at how you can manage donors, recipients, how the intermediaries are actually transferring that money, and it can solve huge economic problems and prevent fraud. That's one of the first areas. I think the second thing that I've been excited about is to look at farming, all right, something very new. A lot of people now are talking about single source coffee, where it's from, but we can take it a step further with blockchain and look at what these farmers have been paid before you decide to buy this coffee, right? Or those type of, or work with those kind of suppliers. It would help the larger companies to understand where the source of the farmed products are from vegetables to anything else, how they are being produced, how they are being exported. Are there safe, sustainable practices across it? You know, the whole world's going to ESG, and blockchain is I think, a fantastic technology to track because it's got a lot of uses in supply chain. I think it's not just in finance, but I want to approach it more from those angles. I think the third area you can look at, and everybody knows this, is fraud. For example, when we deal with wills, sometimes there's a lot of fraud when it comes to land, right? You can actually go to the land office, you can hack in there, you can transfer ownership, but blockchain will actually negate that, will stop you from doing things like that. And I think these are some amazing ways you can do it. I read about one company in the World Economic Forum that's actually using blockchain to trace waste management, right? To reduce the disposal of waste in unsafe ways, to track actually where the waste comes from, how it's being disposed of. So I think there's some fantastic benefits and real problems in the world that blockchain can resolve. We just need to widen the scope of it, I think, and adopt it more and more industries and areas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Raymond. Let me just rattle this topic a bit, like to let you talk even more. Because we all know that there is like certain use cases for blockchain which make sense the most, but at the same time, it's not used in those segments because of the resistance to change from the industry. I talk about traceability and shipping because this is where it would make sense. Letter of credits, as we know, during the bills of lading, using the letter of credits, and it's not used there because the banks will be the last who will join the party using the blockchain. So even if transportation industry, which is already very outdated and very bureaucratic in the way and old school in the way they do things, even if they will join the party, the banks will be the next one who will resist. That's where it makes sense, but it's very difficult to start using this. The second would be, of course, fintech. And I think this is probably where will agree with me on that point, that this is where it makes sense, all the wallets, but the regulations come in. So even if someone launches the service within the next 1 year of successful operation, they start getting more and more regulated based on the country where they operate, and they have to slowly cut different parts of the service they were initially offering to their users. So let me ask you one thing where you personally see the best use case for blockchain and where you see the resistance to that in terms of the industry specifically.
I'll try and go first, Juliet.
Yeah, Raymond, sure.
I think regulators are just afraid of being hit by cases of fraud or getting a backlash from adopting new technology. Any new technology that actually came into the market, if you look at even 30 years ago, even the internet banking, for example, right? It took so long to get the safety protocols done for people to do studies. And I think regulators generally in every industry, from fintech to other things, they are worried about the backlash that they would get from adopting things. And I think my take on it is this, right? If it's a technology that's coming, test it out in a closed loop environment, which is safer, right? You control, for example, if you look at the supply chain issue that you just mentioned in terms of shipping, right? Maybe the letter of credit can be old school, go through the old way because it involves money, whereas the tagging of products can be in blockchain, so that you can actually test and look at the shipping, the how it's shipped or how it's packed, or use it in non-threatening areas, and then get the regulators to test those things out first and then adopt it. Sometimes a regulator may want in fintech, because I'm in that space, they may want to look at a closed loop mechanism first to control certain things before they open it up, and that's fine. But I think more education is needed, and I feel that if blockchain is brought into schools, into universities as a mainstream, and it brings up the next generation of leaders who are going to work and challenge the work environments, and I think you'll see better adoption. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Anyone wants to add something, or we will move on?
Yeah, I have actually 2 examples, which I strongly believe that these are the 2 main use cases in the real economic sector for blockchain. But again, coming from the halal sector, I would give these 2 examples from that sector. But I think that these are quite interesting. Number 1 is halal food traceability. So food is basically something which is very important. It's a big sector, and being halal or haram is always being a target for scandals and frauds. Sometimes organizations they show that they are halal certified, but the certification there is no way to certify or authenticate that certification. So I think that blockchain can actually bring in so much confidence from the user side, so much smoothness of the processes, which can make halal as a very transparent process. By the way, like I was working with a very interesting project where they wanted to actually have a very microchip with, for example, like a chick when it is hatched, and then this microchip can transmit the IoT device. This can transmit the data to the blockchain to the level where it can show you the demographic of that chicken, how many steps it has taken in its whole lifetime, how many heartbeat it took, and like what was the temperature throughout its whole lifetime. So now imagine that you have that technology, by the way, and it was not very expensive. So because as you know that, okay, I'm not talking about future. When you have your wristband, you can know that, okay, today how many steps I have taken, right? So it can happen also with the chicken also, that you can actually know this type of data and you can transmit it on the blockchain. So this is something which we can do. So, and I do not know why authorities are still reluctant, because I can see a very clear use case for blockchain over there, because with the blockchain, then you can from farm to table trace the whole, all the phases, the whole life, and all the processes can be shared. The knowledge can be shared through blockchain. This is number 1 case. Number 2 case about Islamic finance. So if you look at the Islamic financial industry at the moment, it's a $3 trillion industry. Interestingly, as you know, that banking is based on interest, but because in Islam, interest is not allowed, so all the financial transaction, Islamic banks, they avoid interest. How do they avoid it? They actually combine different contracts in one to achieve the same transaction, which can be carried out in with a conventional bank with lending and borrowing process. Now, but because of that, there is a lot of complexity within a transaction. If I can give you an example, if you go to a conventional bank asking for house financing, then it's just lending and borrowing transaction, and then you have to pay back the principal plus interest. That's it. But if you go to an Islamic bank, then there are 4 different transactions which are carried out just to ensure that they cannot fall into the lending and borrowing category. You understand? These 4 transactions are very complex, and they have to follow a very strict sequence. Like first transaction has to be done at this point in time, second transaction, third and fourth, right? So with the use of blockchain, you can use smart contracts, which can basically automate the whole process with no cost. and it can ensure that the transaction can only be done when it meets all the criteria, all the principles and rulings. So I mean, you can codify the whole Islamic law and the mindset of Islamic finance transactions and code it into a smart contract, and then you will have a real very strong case of blockchain usage.
Yeah. As you said yourself, probably in this case, it's not so much the use case, it's more also whether this technology is considered to be halal or not, because apart from just using the tech, you need to know that you can use the tech, right? That's the point to address probably in the future. That's not an easy thing to discuss on the panel.
Just to give you one thing, so like technology is neutral. You can say like it's halal. For example, if you ask me that whether internet is halal or not, so it's halal. It only depends on the usage, that how you are using it. So again, blockchain technology as a technology is halal. How you are using it is basically the question.
Mm-hmm. So talking about the adoption, and Raymond kind of gave us segue into this issue, if we will start teaching blockchain at schools, so people learn about this from the early age, not only coding and developing, which is already done at the schools in Singapore and many other countries. With so much complexity in the technology itself, understanding it, but also using it with the current level of development, how can we drive the better adoption faster? What's your take on this? Raymond, probably.
I think you got to simplify the technology to the point where anyone can use it. Right now, for example, when you talk about ledgers, you talk about smart contracts, it makes it difficult for people to see how it's being done, right? They have these terms which are used in modern English language, which refer to something else, which is related to blockchain. But I think if you simplify the UI UX of how people can use it, you have readily available code where people can actually adopt it and make it usable, and integrate it with existing apps or anything else you're developing. Because you have kids in schools developing apps now. There's no reason why they can't just add a blockchain element, copy and paste it in and use it, similar to what Google has done with their code, right? I think if the UI UX is easier to use, everybody would start using it. But I think more than that, we can take it a step further in schools and look at how you can actually use a hackathon process in schools, for example, inter-university, inter-school, on coming up with the best solutions that blockchain can solve. If you just, like your first question earlier, economic problems that blockchain can solve. If the kids and people in university start thinking and brainstorming this from an early age, you're going to see a bigger adoption rate because they are focused on using it, I think. Right now, coding in schools, my kids go to a school where they learn coding. It's quite basic, and it's a lot of cut and paste. It's not like thinking through how technology can solve problems or disrupt industries. I think it needs to go up one more level. So I think to summarize is two things, Juliet. The first is to make it simpler to understand, simpler terms, simpler UI, UX, make it more accessible. I think the second thing is let education actually be more exciting in schools, in universities, where they actually look at winning things and building those things at the university and school level for adoption.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to argue, but the main issue which I see is that not even UI, UX, but it's the security, right? You have to know how it works. Otherwise, the transactions are irreversible. So if you made a mistake, you're going to lose your money, right? And that's the biggest fear of people who don't know how to use it well. And it's not easy to use it, actually, even if you are working in that sector. And the second one is the responsibility to store your own security key. And the more wallets you use, the more keys you need to write down, store it somewhere, write it on a piece of paper and then chew it and remember it or something. So this is something which is still not resolved and not solved in the industry. How we could potentially have one wallet where you can store all your keys and it's only you who needs to remember one key to access it. And it's decentralized, so it's impossible to hack it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think even with our own passwords and everything else, you have digital storage systems, and sometimes you lose your master password. That's it. Everything goes, right. It's human error, I guess, that can cause issues. Education is needed because once you lose it, you lose it. There have been cases where people have lost a lot of money. Accounts have been hacked into. People have lost their coin and everything else. But I think I think education is what plays a part, right? The more you educate people that this is your currency, it's like a physical note. If you lose it, it's gone, right? And if more people understand that and how it's something that you can't do without, I think then it's going to get easier for people to remember and to place safeguards on it. We're not there yet.
Dr. Farrukh, you have something to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with Raymond that education is the key actually, and awareness to not only the regulators, not only to the market players, but also to the common people, the masses. And it has to start at the grassroots level. For example, like in schools and universities, and colleges where they have to understand that what is the technology is there and what it can offer to us. I just want to add two more points here. Number one is mostly what we have seen the trend in the crypto space and the blockchain space is that mostly these are technologists. I mean, like these are technology experts who drive the startups and the projects. Because of that, they are very much fascinated and obsessed with the technology. Because of that, sometimes they tend to forget that how it can be simplified and conveyed into a manner where an ordinary person can understand that, okay, this is the technology and how it can be used and how it can benefit me and the whole society. Second thing I wanted to add is basically about the regulations. We also need regulations because I think Juliet also mentioned about the security and about the measures, risk management strategies, etc. So these things are actually come into play when can become more widespread when you have regulations in place. But I think that right now still many jurisdictions are struggling with the regulations, like how they can basically have a legal framework and regulations for blockchain, smart contracts, dApps, etc. I think that the best way for the industry to grow is to have self-regulations. So they need to have their own global standardized quality measures and also principles and rules, and they have to follow them. So it will be like what I'm suggesting is like self-regulated industry at the moment, because the industry itself understands more as compared to the regulators.
Okay.
Add a critical voice to all of this. I totally disagree with Dr. Farrukh on that. It's good to disagree, right, on the panel. That's why we have.
Of course, that's what we want.
I think the last thing this industry should rely on is self-regulation. That has shown itself not to work. I think we need strong nation states like Singapore that also can be brave and kind of create sandboxes, but also quite welcoming regulatory frameworks. I mean, you see around the world a few countries that are embracing things like cryptocurrency. I think when you talk about Dr. Farrukh and everyone else here, the regulatory frameworks, you mostly talk about cryptocurrency regulation, not really uses of blockchain. That's something else. That's just technology. The question is, should we promote this more in schools? I don't know why we should promote it more in schools. I mean, blockchains, artificial intelligence, no-code programming. There are lots of things we need to promote in schools to create a better, more sustainable future. Blockchain technology is only a small part of that, and it's not applicable to most problems it's currently being tried to be applied to. So just to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, I think there is too much blockchain right now, and we should basically make sure that we teach our kids a wide variety of techniques and technologies and methods.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah. If I can add something here, I do understand actually, Will, I agree with you that it's too much focus on the blockchain at the moment. And we are also losing a little bit of focus from data science and artificial intelligence, which are also as important as blockchain itself. But still, in terms of the regulation, I still see that, for example, smart contracts. It's not crypto, but like smart contracts, the decentralized application on blockchain. So it's still their legal status is not clear in many jurisdictions, whether it can be treated as a contract. It can in the court of law is still not very clear. So I was coming from that angle that I think that even in the adoption of blockchain and smart contracts, I think that we need more regulations and legal framework. But definitely, it is the job of regulators, and they have like a neutral position over here, where on one hand they want to promote innovations, and on the other hand they want to secure the interest of the common people.
Totally agree.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, because the main difference of blockchain technology from all the other things which we just mentioned, AI, machine learning, and big data, is that it is decentralized. And in essence, it's not of benefit for many organizations or even governments, right? Because they will lose control. Literally, there will be no need in the third party anymore, someone who can safeguard our security or safety as, investors, individuals. So how do you think we can eradicate this challenge on the way to using the blockchain in the future, where it makes sense, of course? Who wants to take this one?
Okay, I'll go.
Thank you, Raymond.
I think when it comes to regulators, it's again, I mentioned it's the backlash. They don't want to adopt something too fast, too new, and have a backlash back at them if it doesn't work or it's not thought out well. So I think moving in stages is the safest way to go, right? A decentralized system where regulators are not needed can only happen if everybody's regulating themselves well. And I agree with Bill. When it comes to certain things, you do need the regulators. You need to have that third-party oversight into what you're doing. Otherwise, there's going to be more cases of fraud. So maybe certain non-critical areas can be those areas where regulators start adopting it first. Maybe not in transactions, but in other areas where blockchain can be used to tag goods, to look at complementing existing systems first. The second thing I think needs to happen is to look at how we can solve some current immediate problems. For example, if you take a look at voting today, there's a lot of fraud, electoral fraud. There's a lot of tampering with votes. And you know that blockchain can solve that problem immediately if it's adopted, right?
Exactly. So the question, and there is a conflict within that. How can we drive the adoption and make use of the technology, for example, for voting, while there are certain parties, organizations, or governments who don't want to lose the control? They want to control it because then they can use it for their own benefit.
Yeah, but those organizations are not going to use anything new anyway, because they want that control and they want the ability to manipulate results. But if you have the majority of the population saying that, look, this is something that can make our vote heard and our vote seen in a transparent way, then you can have those countries adopting it first. So for example, if more forward progressing countries around the world start adopting it in voting, for example, and then the mass of the world population is going to see, yeah, well, we have voting issues here, we've got fraud, so why don't we follow the system that's already being used in that country? For example, election watchdogs or something that wasn't there when we first started looking at voting, but today they are there. There's independent bodies that do it because they wanted that oversight, right? So yeah, to look at areas where it can be used and take it in stages first. Maybe even regulators could look at a closed loop, centralized system first to monitor things, test it out in different areas, then adopt it later. It's not going to have widespread adoption because sometimes, I agree with you, Juliet, it's not so easy. And certain, for example, regulators may want the oversight. They may not want decentralization of certain transactions or the lack of control in financial pegging or whatever else that they may be working on. But at least to use it in areas where it could make a difference, like voting.
Yeah, that's a great example, by the way. Yeah, thank you for using it. Anyone else wants to add to this? Not
well,
really.
Yeah, just if I can say something, I also agree with Raymond that, okay, there are few challenges and issues with the adoption of technology, and it's not the technology itself which is challenging, or infrastructure. Perhaps like the mindset, there are some social and political issues attached with it. Even, for example, like there are few countries where corruption is rampant. They do not want to adopt blockchain for electoral purposes, for elections, for even like financial transactions, for taxation, etc. Why? Because then it will become very transparent and maybe like too transparent for them.
Thank you. Like one of the great examples I saw of using the blockchain for good in this case, also to the example which Raymond mentioned earlier at the beginning of the panel, was UNHCR when they were paying refugees certain dotations using the app which they had with biometrics, right? So you know exactly who received already the support, who didn't, and it was impossible to steal the funds. So that's a successful example, and it was already like 3 years ago when it was used by UNHCR. So the next question I would combine together with the last one, because we're running out of time on our panel, is that imagine two things. So first, we're an instant gratification society overall, and we shop online. It's very easy to swipe with the card or scan the QR code and your transactions goes instantly. It's very easy to purchase things in the blink of the eye. But the payment with blockchain sometimes for some simple things, even just coffee, takes a long time. So how can we still make sense of using the cryptocurrency by shopping? Which is a big thing for our society right now, considering that tech challenge. How can we use it in, let's say, invisible to the end user's way, and not to suffer from this issue that it's not an instant transaction and sometimes very complicated, or it doesn't go through, or it takes a long time, or it's expensive?
Just to answer, I don't think kind of cryptocurrencies of the future is going to take time at all. It's going to be immediate, right? I mean, I think some of that is coming from transfers of Bitcoin. Bitcoin wasn't really, for example, designed to be adopted by the masses, right? I mean, it was quite amazing, but one thing Bitcoin is really bad at is to scale. And you can solve that in a number of different ways. I mean, there are protocols right now that are very, very fast. So I think that's more of a technical issue that can be solved by having different layers, different clearinghouses. So I don't think that's going to be something people worry about, to be honest. Especially for small transactions, it might be an issue where you have really big transactions, but then that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. If I may read something, yeah, Will, you were saying something?
No. I'm
okay, perfect. So giving an example of Dubai here, so you can see that Emirates has recently announced that they can accept crypto payments, Emirates Airline. And we have also seen that many real estate agents and developers like Damak and Imar, which are big real estate developers here and builders, and they have also accepted. They have also started accepting directly crypto payments for property. And another, so these are basically big things. For example, I would just say that real estate is something which is like a big payment, and then you have Emirates Airline where you buy flight tickets through crypto payments, and then now recently. City Center Majid Al Futtaim also has got a collaboration and MOU with Binance. So which means that like now you can in near future, I mean near future means like within months only, you will be able to pay at the city center, at Kasko, at other hypermarkets and supermarkets for small things in the form of crypto. How we have solved this problem actually. So I do understand that still if you are buying a coffee and try to pay with Bitcoin, so the on-chain solution is still slow, but there are some off-chain solutions are already there. For example, there are some other companies which are providing you payment gateways, crypto-based payment gateways. So they can immediately convert your payment in Bitcoin and then transfer the fiat money to the vendor immediately. And then that conversion is instant. They take a fees out of it, but these conversions these are basically off-chain solutions where you can easily pay with your Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any cryptocurrency, and then it will be immediately converted into fiat money.
Yeah, so what you are saying is that at the moment it makes sense to use cryptocurrency to buy something like real estate, some big things, not a cup of coffee or I don't know, any kind of goods on Lazada, and it's already working, so it's more convenient for larger transactions. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but I think also what Dr. Farrukh is saying is that you have apps like, BitPay. I don't know if you can see that because my back.
Yeah.
BitPay has been active last 10 years, enabling small purchases like coffee. Sorry.
Yeah, or the solution. So it's not about the length of the transaction or technical complexity that it takes a long time. It's also about the volatility of the currencies you're using. So there are a few wallets, again, like crypto.com, for allowing you to just switch at any point to make a transaction and convert it into fiat. And then when you're ready, you can use it, right? But you can convert it into different currencies. So that's already convenient. You don't have to do it on the spot. Raymond?
You can do it on the spot, by the way, because now even I can tell you that Binance and other big crypto.com, they have their debit card and credit card even. Some of them, they have credit card, and these are basically collaborated with Visa and MasterCards. So which means that like on Visa and MasterCard's network, you can use your crypto debit card. And
yeah, that's exactly what I meant. But you still navigate it through your wallet, right? And then you just use the card to pay it at the merchant store.
Yes.
Yeah.
Juliet, so I agree with Dr. Farrukh and Will that transactions are getting faster, but I think we got to also take a step back to look at the anti-fraud properties of Bitcoin, right? So when you purchase certain things, for example, luxury good makers like LV are talking about actually adopting Bitcoin to track authenticity of their products, okay, to prevent fraud. People are moving into that. If you look at, for example, anybody who's bought anything online, and you know that sometimes buyers are unvalidated, they sell goods which are not validated. And I've lost money on the internet buying stuff. I don't know whether anybody else has. But if the potential of blockchain coming in and actually preventing fraud, even if the transaction takes a bit of time for the authentication, that's the thing that brings the value. It's not so much buying a cup of coffee. That's something you can lose money over. But if you're buying something online and the whole world is moved online after the pandemic, how can we authenticate goods? How can we authenticate sellers and buyers? How can we authenticate the currency that people are paying with to make sure there's no fraud? I think those are the things that blockchain can address, not so much the speed. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And again, it's a very good point. Thank you for making it, Raymond, because what I see, for example, in the past, let's say 5 years, even the use cases and different projects, even the internal accelerators or CVCs, they started looking into blockchain solutions and how they can use it in their business. First, I think it started out of fashion just to show that they're also keeping up with the technology.
Right.
But over time, industries, literally, they showed us what is the real use case. So luxury is a big driver for the adoption of blockchain, specifically just for the traceability, as you mentioned, and you can resell your bag or something. Another case which I also saw was Airbus, because there is a very complex and regulated system of transporting the spare parts for the airplane, storing the airplanes and all of that. And this is where, first, it's very important to have truthful information, and secondly, of course, that it stops from the fraud. Because it's all about the safety of the passengers. And Airbus is very successful at using the blockchain technology, and it actually works because first it makes sense, and secondly, it's not related to any regulations. There is no transactions there. It's just about the paper trail. So that's a very good use case. And we have another 7 minutes to finish our panel, and probably I would encourage you to share what you think is the future of blockchain in your eyes, and what we can do from our side to drive the adoption to the next billion users. What is missing in the industry right now, if to be honest?
I think, just if I can just start first,
Sure.
Keep it short. There's a whole host of social problems that blockchain can resolve. And a lot of my businesses are built around financial inclusion and helping the marginalized. And when you think about applications of blockchain in those contexts, payment of people, for example, making sure people are paid well from supply to end users, preventing fraud, donor mitigation, voter rights. I think there's a huge amount of things that blockchain can be used for in very useful cases. The IBM has got a good use case of a company called Plastic Bank, and what they do is they help recycle plastic. And what they do, they get the poor to actually collect the plastic from bottles and everything else, and they can trade it for goods that they want and services that they want. Now, it takes some time to verify what they want for and to get the goods, but at least the poor have a use case of getting what they want. And I think this kind of vision for blockchain with financial inclusion can actually really look at increasing the adoption in the age we live in, where sustainability has become a big thing. And our fellow human race, looking out for them instead of just ourselves, blockchain can have a lot of good applications in those areas, which I'm excited about. Thanks, Juliet.
Thank you, Raymond.
I'm happy to follow up on what Raymond said, because I actually completely agree with him. And thanks for all your good comments, Raymond. I think financial inclusion seems to me to be the kind of most immediate use case. I know a company that is using the SIM card on normal feature phones to even sign and basically host a wallet on the SIM card that lets marginalized people actually receive cryptocurrency that they can then use to purchase necessary items, and also even to receive microloans and then also repay microloans. I think that's there's an extreme waste in terms of corruption, right, around the world, and this just seems like really the most obvious use case. Not really, super finance or making Goldman Sachs even smarter. It's basically trying to avoid corruption and trying to make sure marginalized people get access to the aid given to them. Even also for larger government projects or infrastructure projects, right, where you can potentially also control the flow of cash and prevent massive corruption, which happens right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Will.
So I will just give a very general overview that with every technology, first there is a hype, and then there is a disappointment where it goes right below the level of expectation. And only then people start realizing that, okay, what this technology can do, and actually what are the real cases and how it can benefit us. So I think that even if we take an example of artificial intelligence, it's been around for 70 years now. So we started with the vision that, okay, we will have robots, and those robots will replace human beings in all aspects. But until now, we are trying to get there, but we haven't. Similarly, so if you look at the life of blockchain technology, so it's been only like more than just around 12 to 13 years. So right now we are still trying to understand that what this technology can do, what it cannot do, what are the limitations, etc. So very good cases. I think I have learned a lot from the respected speakers and moderator. And I think that blockchain can do a lot in the future, in the coming years, because I can see that there is a chance of mass adoption. For example, we can have digital identity for you. And another use case I just wanted to just highlight it very briefly is Dubai Land Department. So they are also trying to have complete blockchain adoption for land registry and transfer and buying and selling. So I think these are the small use cases, but we are trying to get to make the technology useful for us and for the whole society.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I want to thank all the speakers today for sharing your opinions and what you think about blockchain and how you can use it for better. Thank you so much, Raymond, Dr. Farrukh, and Will.
Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.